Hare Krishna, welcome everyone. Good to see you all. Tonight, we'll do an overview of chapters 1 to 6 of Bhagavad Gita, as it is, by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And the purpose of the overview is to prepare for the closed book examination on chapters 1 to 6. And after we do the closed book, when we do the closed book examination, which will be soon, next few weeks, you'll also need to hand in your open book essay. And the open book essay will be your summary of the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, as it is, by Srila Prabhupada. So I'll go through, do an overview summary of the first 6 chapters of the Gita. If you have any questions or any comments as we go, then please feel free to ask. So, the opening chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1, is called Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. So, this chapter, Krishna does not speak at length in this chapter in terms of philosophy. Krishna does give instructions in the opening chapter, but it's really in chapter 2 where Krishna begins to give philosophical instructions to Arjuna. So the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is really setting the scene. It's called Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. So the opening chapter gives us an understanding of the characters who were involved in the battle and who were part of the Mahabharata. As we know, Bhagavad Gita is one chapter in the Mahabharata, the great book. And it is spoken at the beginning of the Battle of Kurukshetra, right? The opening of the Battle of Kurukshetra. This is when the Bhagavad Gita is spoken, just before the battle begins. As we know, the Mahabharata is a great epic. It's a great story. It's telling the story of the Yadu dynasty. The Kuru dynasty. And the Mahabharata is a historical narrative which is full of adventure and intrigue and captivates our attention. And there's a great lead up to the battle, the actual battle of Kurukshetra. But leading up to the battle, there is a great deal of suspense. And then finally, when the battle is about to begin, Krishna speaks the Bhagavad Gita when he has everyone's attention. He's captivated everyone's attention, then he speaks the Bhagavad Gita. So the first part of of chapter 1, verses 1 to 13, is a description of the different warriors who have come to fight the battle on each side, on the side of the Kurus and on the side of the Pandavas. This is a fratricidal war, which means it is being fought between cousin brothers. So it's a battle which is taking place between members of a family. So it gives a description of who is present on the battlefield. Then from verses 14 to 19, it describes the blowing of the conch shells. And we get an indication from the very beginning that there will be victory for the Pandavas. And Prabhupada points out that the Pandavas would be victorious because Krishna was on their side, because the battle was being fought at a holy place, Kurukshetra. There's various reasons why it was being indicated that the Pandavas would be victorious in the battle. It's a very interesting discussion, very interesting point. That the Pandavas would be victorious, and there's auspicious omens. And when the conch shells are blown by Krishna and Arjuna and the Pandavas, the sound of that, they have so much confidence, even though their army is smaller, and on paper it may appear that they would lose the battle because the other side had very powerful warriors and had a larger army. Even with all those things to be considered, still the Pandavas were confident that they would win the battle because Krishna was with them. And they were following Dharma. And the battle was being fought at a holy place, which would act in their favor. So there are some indications which are given in the very beginning that they would be victorious in the battle. Then from verses 20 to 27, Arjuna says to Krishna, please draw my chariot between the two armies so that I can see those who are present here, who are desiring to fight in this great trial of arms. Now, I was pointing this out in the class in the temple yesterday, that the first time we see Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, he is driving the chariot of Arjuna. And the same is there in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The first time we see Krishna in Srimad Bhagavatam, he is driving the chariot of Arjuna. He is known as Parthasarathi. Krishna is the servant of his devotees. Krishna likes to serve his devotees. He likes to play the part of being the servant because he's teaching us. Not only does he like it, but he's also teaching us that we should also serve his devotees. That is the highest function of the soul, to serve the devotees of God. So from verse 27 through to the end of the chapter, verse 45, and then going into chapter 2 actually, Arjuna gives 5 different reasons why he does not want to fight the battle of Kurukshetra. He gives 5 reasons why he does not want to fight the battle of Kurukshetra. The first reason in verses 27 and 28 is compassion. That's the natural mood of a devotee. A devotee of Krishna does not, he feels compassionate towards others. He doesn't want to be in conflict with others. So Arjuna is naturally like that. He's naturally soft-hearted. He's compassionate. He doesn't want to kill people just so his family could rule the earth. They could become the ruling dynasty of the earth. Right? Arjuna does not want to do that. So this is his first reason why he does not want to fight, out of compassion. The second reason, which is mentioned in verses 31 to 35, and also verses 7 and 8 in the following chapter, chapter 2, is Arjuna gives the reasoning of enjoyment. How can we enjoy the earth, the kingdom, ruling as the royal family if all our relatives are dead? It's a very strong argument. These are very strong arguments why Arjuna is explaining he does not want to fight this battle. Now, Krishna will counter all of these objectives, and Krishna will still, even after hearing these very good reasons why he should not fight, Krishna will still convince him to fight the battle, right? Which is quite amazing, because Krishna's intent is completely spiritual. And that's what the Bhagavad Gita is spoken for, to take us off the bodily platform of life, material consciousness, to the platform of to the pure spiritual platform. So he's taking us to that platform. So he says there's no reason for us to fight because there'll be no enjoyment. You know, what enjoyment is there in killing one's relatives? The third reason, which is spoken of between verses 37 to 43, is destruction of family. That if all the warriors, if all the Kshatriyas, if all of the protectors of society are killed, then families will be destroyed. And because the families are destroyed by the battle, then we will have all sorts of problems on the earth. If all the men are killed on the battlefield, the women will not be protected. And if the women are not protected, then unscrupulous men may take advantage of them. And then Varna Sankara, or unwanted population, unwanted progeny, unwanted children may be born. And if they are born, then we can have so many problems on the earth. So this is another reason he gives. The family will be destroyed, and family traditions will be destroyed. And society as a whole will suffer. Therefore, we should not engage in this battle. The fourth reason he gives for not fighting is sinful reactions. He says that if we fight this battle, we will get bad karma, because we'll be killing our superiors, we'll be killing so many people, and that will bring negative karma onto us. Therefore, we cannot do this. So he speaks about this in verses 44 and 45 of chapter 1, and then he also mentions it in the 5th verse of the 2nd chapter. This reason of sinful reactions will cause us so many difficulties. So we should not fight. We'll get too much bad karma. And then the 5th reason that Arjuna gives why he does not want to fight is indecision. Because that's actually in the next chapter he mentions this, in in verse 6, but he says, we don't know if it's better if we conquer them or being conquered by them, which is better. He's indecisive, and when we're faced with very difficult challenges in life, very difficult situations, we quite often become confused. That's natural, and we become indecisive. If we kill them, there may be advantages, but if we don't kill them, there are definitely advantages. So he's indecisive. So these are the 5 reasons why he does not want to fight. In this first chapter, in the opening chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna uses very specific names when he is addressing Krishna. So these names are chosen for particular reasons. And these names have special meaning. When he uses a particular name, then it has a particular meaning. So this is significant. We should study these names, which are given in the Bhagavad Gita, and understand the meaning behind why Arjuna is choosing these particular names. So we then go into the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. The second chapter, the first chapter is called Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. The second chapter is Contents of the Gita Summarized. So the Gita is summarized in this second chapter. As Krishna gives like a broad summary of these spiritual topics which will be spoken throughout the remainder of the Bhagavad Gita. So verses 1 to 10 of the second chapter, Arjuna, he surrenders to Krishna. Shishasteham sadhimam tvam prapanam. I am a disciple. I am your disciple. I am a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. So he gives this, he develops this mood of surrender towards Krishna. Now, when he develops the correct mood of surrendering to Krishna, what does Krishna do? Krishna then begins to instruct him. You can't instruct, and this is something important for us to understand in our lives. You can't instruct someone who is not willing to listen to you. You can't instruct someone who's not willing to listen. If someone is not willing to listen, then don't instruct them. It's a very simple point. Don't instruct them. If they're not willing to listen, don't give instructions. So Arjuna finally becomes ready to listen to Krishna, and then Krishna begins to instruct him. Okay, you're listening now? You're willing to follow my instruction? Now I will instruct you. So the first 10 verses, Arjuna is surrendering to Krishna. Then from verses 11 to 30, we're hearing about jnana. Jnana means knowledge. Knowledge, divya gyan, which means transcendental knowledge or spiritual knowledge. Krishna begins the Bhagavad Gita. The first instruction he gives to Arjuna, asochan anvasochas tvam. The alphabet begins with the letter A. And Krishna begins his instruction to Arjuna with the letter A, asochan. Because the beginning of spiritual life is to understand you are not the body, you are the soul. That is where spiritual life begins. And Arjuna is being taught this foundational principle of spirituality, of true spirituality, of real spiritual instruction in life. He's given this instruction. So this is where spiritual life begins. Krishna goes through many examples and explains the difference between the body and the soul, between spirit and matter. He gives the difference so that we'll understand it clearly. Then, in verses 31 to 38, he then speaks on the platform of what we call Kama Kanda. Kama Kanda means following duties, following your religious duties in this world, proper action in this world. So he says to Arjuna that those who are Kshatriyas, they look forward to the battle. They look forward to the battlefield. He explains to Arjuna that you should fight because that is your duty in this world. You're a Kshatriya. So please fight. Please do your duty. Please protect the citizens. And he explains to Arjuna, dishonor is worse than death. So he gives this reasoning why Arjuna should fight the battle. Even from a material point of view, you should fight, you should do your duty and fight. So he's speaking to Arjuna on all different levels. On the spiritual platform, he explains in the previous section, verses 11 to 30, the soul cannot die. So you're not really killing anyone anyway, so go and fight. Now he's saying that, it is the duty of a warrior to fight, to protect the citizens. So please go. So from every angle, he's trying to convince Arjuna to fight the battle. Then in verses 39 to 53, he is explaining to Arjuna what we call Nishkam Karma Yoga. In other words, Arjuna, you should fight, but without attachment to the result. This is called Nishkam. Nishkam means without desire. He says to Arjuna, you should fight in this battle, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. You should fight, but without personal ambition or personal desire. You should fight, but do it for me. Do it with spiritual motivation, as devotional service, as bhakti yoga. Do not do it simply from a material point of view. So this is significant, that he is speaking like this, that Krishna is speaking like this. So he says, fight, and if you fight like this, you will not get reactions. You will not get any karma. So he's defeating Arjuna's previous objections. You will not get any karma. Because you're doing it as an act of service, devotional service, for the pleasure of the supreme entity. So he's convincing Arjuna to fight without personal desires, doing his duty, and without receiving reactions for his activity. So then, in verses 54 to 72, Krishna is describing the mind of a person who is in transcendental consciousness. Someone who is in what we call samadhi. Samadhi means pure spiritual consciousness. This person is in pure spiritual consciousness. So that is what we're aiming for. We're aiming just to do our duty, to act on the spiritual platform just for Krishna's pleasure. So this is what we call the yoga ladder. Now, the yoga ladder begins with the platform that most people are on, which is animal life. Right? Most people are dvipada pashu, humans, who are just acting like animals, just trying to enjoy their senses. Then the varnashram system brings one to the platform of karma kanda, where you're doing your duty and you're living in a regulated way for a higher purpose. moving away from your own selfish desires. This is called karma. This then takes us to the platform of karma yoga, which has two divisions, sakama and nishkama, which means sakama means you have material desires, but you're offering everything to Krishna. And nishkama karma yoga means that you very much give up your material desires and offer everything to Krishna. And then this leads to the platform of samadhi, which is spoken of at the end of the chapter, where Krishna speaks about acting just completely on the spiritual platform, right? Where you just act, you're doing your activities in a mood of devotion based on the realization that you are the soul, you are Krishna's eternal servant. So Prabhupada explains to us, there's one verse in the second chapter, which is verse 241. Vyavasyatmika buddhi ekeha kurunanda, where Prabhupada explains that we should, or Krishna explains, we should focus our mind, ekeha kurunanda, in a singular point, just on serving him. Control your intelligence and fix your intelligence just on serving Krishna. There's a very powerful purport to that verse. And Prabhupada said when he read the commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur on that verse, that we should just completely absorb ourselves in a one-pointed fashion with our intelligence in Krishna's service. In the purport, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that this means that for the disciple, he has no other object of focus than the order of his spiritual master, his guru. So Prabhupada said that struck him when he read that many, many, many years ago before he came to America. Prabhupada said it struck him that we should have one pointed focus on the orders of our spiritual master. So Prabhupada said that was a very important verse for him in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So in the early part of the chapter, Krishna explains to Arjuna, you're not the body, you are the soul. And people may think that because I'm not the body, I am the soul. And if I kill someone else's body, like Arjuna is being asked to in the war, I will not get any karma or any reactions because the soul cannot die. So I can kill you, your soul does not die, so what is the difference? But Prabhupada explains that is a false philosophy. And he explains in the commentary, it does not give us permission just to go out and kill anyone. Okay. So then, chapter 3 is called Karma Yoga. Krishna explains to Arjuna in the beginning of that chapter in verses 1 to 8 that the soul must act. You cannot stop doing anything even for a moment. Right? Krishna explains that to Arjuna. You cannot stop doing anything. Even for one moment, you cannot stop. Right? Not possible for you to stop. You have to do things. The soul is active by nature. Because the soul is active by nature, you must act. You must act in this world. But the soul is meant to act for Krishna's pleasure. So in chapter 3 is Karma Yoga, right? Where it is being described how we do all of our activities for the pleasure of Krishna. That is the topic of chapter 3, Karma. The Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga means action for Krishna. In verses 9 to 16 of chapter 3, we're hearing about how we must act in this world, but if we act according to Krishna's instructions and we act for his pleasure, we will not be bound in this world by karma bandhana. Karma bandhana means the bondage of action. We all get bound in this world. It's bondage. You know, when you do a material activity, you get bad karma, negative karma. But when you act for Krishna, then you break that karma bandhana. You break the bondage of work in this world. Then in verses 17 to 32 in chapter 3, Krishna explains to Arjuna that you should set the example for others. Yad yada chariti shrestha. Right? Krishna gives the example that you have to act in this world, but you have to do it for you have to act in this world to set a proper example for others. Right? To teach them what is correct, what is the proper example. Is the platform that we need to come to, where we act in this world by setting an example for others. We teach others how to serve Krishna, how to act in devotional service. So then, in verses 33 to 42 in this chapter 3, Arjuna asked the question about why is it that sometimes in this world we may act and we may find ourselves doing things that we know we should not be doing, but still we cannot stop ourselves. What is that hidden force that sometimes makes us act even against our will in this world? Sometimes we act against our will. We know we shouldn't do something, but we go and do it anyway, right? What makes us do that? So Krishna explains to Arjuna, Kama esha, krota esha, rajaguno samubhava. It is lust only, Arjuna. And Krishna explains at the end of this chapter that this lust is the all-devouring sinful enemy of the soul. So we have to be very careful in our karma, in our actions in this world, that we don't become overcome by lust. Because so many people become overcome by lust. And they just act in a very materialistic way. So then, chapter 4 is entitled Jnana Yoga, or Transcendental Knowledge. Right? This is a famous chapter in the Bhagavad Gita, Transcendental Knowledge. So in verses 1 to 10, there are verses which describe how transcendental knowledge comes into this world. And what is transcendental knowledge? And evam parampara praptam imam raja shio vidu. Krishna explains that it comes through disciplic succession, how this knowledge comes down. And he explains the purpose of his appearance in this world. Why does Krishna advent himself in this world? And why is it that, or how is it that if you understand Krishna's transcendental nature, Jamma Kama Chime Divyam, if you understand Krishna's nature, his transcendental nature, then you will not take birth again in this material world. So, Krishna is giving this instruction in the very beginning of the chapter about Divya Gyan, or transcendental knowledge, how it comes down, the purpose of him coming, understanding his appearance within this material world. Then verses 11 to 15 are describing how to apply transcendental knowledge, or Divya Gyan, in this world. So, although Krishna creates this Varnashram system, Chaturvanyam Maya Shrishtam, Krishna explains, I create this system. He is not obliged or affected or obligated to work in this world when he comes. Right? When he comes, he just comes to set the example for us. But he has no karma, he has no obligation to work in this world. He has no fruitive or material desires. He teaches us the correct example of how to act properly on the spiritual platform. And he even reveals his own pastimes, which is simply for his pleasure. Krishna is not bound as we are. When Krishna comes to this world, it is different to us. Right? His Leela is Divya. His karma is Divya, which means it is spiritual. Krishna is not obligated, and he does not have to work in this world. And whatever action he does do is purely spiritual and for his pleasure. So then verses 16 to 23, Krishna is explaining that the platform of transcendental knowledge. And Krishna explains in this section different types of karma. So Krishna explains action in inaction and inaction in action. He explains what that is. So we should understand. Inaction in action and action in inaction. So in other words, inaction in action means that when you're doing devotional service, you act in this world, but you don't get any karma or any reactions back. Therefore, when you act in that way, you're on the spiritual platform, and you're not receiving karma. So even though it's action, it's you don't receive any reactions for it. Krishna also explains in this section about three types of karma: karma, vikarma, and akarma. Karma being regulated work, which is given by scriptures, by higher authority. Vikarma means work which is sinful, which is not regulated by scriptural injunctions. And akarma means acting in service to Krishna and not receiving any reactions at all. These are the three types of reactions which are there. So then in verses 34 to 42, at the end of the chapter, Krishna gives the conclusion about what is the best way to receive spiritual knowledge or transcendental knowledge. He says the best way to receive transcendental knowledge is to receive it from a guru. And then he glorifies transcendental knowledge. And when you have spiritual knowledge, which is received from a guru, in parampara from Krishna, the effect that it has on your life, in that it will help you to overcome your material desires, understand things as they are, and act on the spiritual platform. So then chapter 5 is called Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga, or action in Krishna consciousness. So as we explained in the classes, this is an amalgamation of the two levels which are spoken of in chapter 3 and chapter 4, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. Karma means activity, Jnana means knowledge. Chapter 5 speaks about the synthesis, the union between acting with transcendental knowledge, which is called devotional service. So chapter 5, in the beginning, Arjuna asks, what is better? Because Arjuna, at this point in the Bhagavad Gita, he's trying to get out of fighting the battle, because he's given reasons in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita why he does not want to fight. So now he's trying to give his reasons why I should not fight. And Krishna is answering him. Arjuna says in the very beginning of the chapter, what is better, renouncing work within this world? Should we renounce work? Or should we work in a spirit of devotion? So in one sense, he's trying to avoid working or fighting. But Krishna says, actually, to work or to fight, to serve, but with knowledge and dedicating your actions to me, that is the highest of all duties, of all actions. So then verses 7 to 26, it is being described. Krishna is explaining how to act on this spiritual platform. How when one acts in this material world, he does his duty, but he does his duty without attachment, which is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to do our duty for the pleasure of Guru and Krishna. But we're not supposed to be attached to material desires or material things. So that is the instruction which we're given. Act, as chapter 5 is teaching us, as Bhagavad Gita ultimately teaches us, as Krishna recommends. Act in this world, but do it in devotion and without attachment to material desires. So then in verses 27 to 28, it is mentioned that we can achieve the same kind of liberation through an inactive path, the path of Ashtanga Yoga. And then finally, in verse 29, the final verse of chapter 5, Krishna speaks about the peace formula. Bhaktaram Jagatapasam, Savaloka Maheshwaram, Suridam Savabhutanam, Gatwa Shantim Richtahati, which means this final verse is the peace formula, Prabhupada calls it. It is called the peace formula, which means if we understand it, we act upon it, we will be peaceful and the world will attain peace, which we see in light of our current context would be very handy right now for world peace if people would listen to these instructions and follow them, and the world could actually attain peace. So although Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, he speaks of the active path and the inactive path, he favors the active path because it's very hard to be inactive. Most of us are too, our minds are too fickle. In other words, it's very hard for us to sit still and just meditate or just chant all day. So therefore, we have to be active. So Krishna favors that path. Be active in this world, but dedicate your activities to me. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains that there are three doers of action in this chapter 5, verses 13 to 16. Right? Krishna explains there are three doers of action. When the embodied living being controls his nature and mentally renounces all actions, he resides happily in the city of 9 gates, neither working nor causing work to be done. The embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. When, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nescience is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. So there are three doers in this world. Krishna is explaining in this section. The first is, if someone has knowledge, he realizes that all the bodily activities are automatically carried out by the three modes of material nature. So the first doer in this world is the modes, the gunas, three modes of nature. Secondly, the modes consist of inert matter. Thus, they simply carried out activities which are desired by the living entity and sanctioned by the soul. So we have three doers in this world, which is explained in chapter 5. Whenever we act, right, there is ourselves, the living entity. We're the doer or the actor within this world. Then there are the three modes of nature, which press us to act within this world. The material energy presses us to act. Of course, it's our decision whether we act or not, but it presses us to act. And then there is the super soul, Krishna, right, who sanctions. We might want to act, but Krishna will decide whether or not we are successful in achieving what we want to achieve. So we have the living entity, the modes of nature, and the super soul. All three of these are the three doers of action within this material world. Called Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga means the yoga of meditation. So verses 1 to 4, Krishna describes to Arjuna that the true yogi is one who is not attached to fruitive work. Someone who's not attached to work in this world or to the results of the work, not someone who doesn't do anything. But Krishna is saying to Arjuna, the best person in this world is someone who acts in this world, but he is not attached to this world. As Jesus says, be in the world, but not of the world. Then Krishna gives instructions about the mind, because chapter 6 is called Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga means the yoga of meditation, how to control the mind. So he's speaking more of the inactive path in this particular chapter of the Gita. So he talks about the mind and how the mind can be the best friend or the worst enemy, and how we need to learn to control the mind in order to advance in Krishna consciousness. Then from verses 11 to 32, Krishna teaches us how to practice yoga. In other words, if we're planning to leave this world, to give up actions in society, to go to live in the forest, and to perform Ashtanga yoga, then Krishna gives the instructions on how to do that in this world. So he speaks about the different stages and the practices of yoga and how to control the turbulent mind. Krishna gives this instruction. And then at the end of the chapter, Krishna explains the destination of the unsuccessful yogi. Arjuna says, what happens if I dedicate myself to spiritual life as you're recommending, but I'm not successful? Then what happens? Krishna reassures us that whatever advancement we make in this life will not be taken away, and we will take off from where we left off in this life. And then finally, in verses 46 and 47, the final verses of the chapter, Krishna speaks about the highest yogi, someone who is always engaged in thoughts of him. And this stimulates Krishna to remember his devotee, who is the topmost yogi, the topmost person engaged in service to him. And then he begins to focus on, and in the next chapter, chapter 7, about the nature of bhakti, which his devotee, who is the topmost yogi, renders in service to him. So that's a basic understanding of the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna teaches us near the end of the chapter how to control the mind. He gives 2 instructions. He says, by suitable practice, abhyas, and by vairagya or detachment, you can control your mind. So that is the theme of the 6th chapter, Jnana Yoga, how to control the mind and to fix it on Krishna. So I'll stop here. Does anyone have any questions or comments on anything that we discussed in preparation for our upcoming exam? Okay, thank you all for coming. We'll speak to you soon. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Babu.